And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone in the Tampa Bay area and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you from RBLR Sports. I am here today for the RBLR Rowdies podcast. Instead of Leo, my usual co-host, because we are recording on a Sunday, I have our producer, Eureka, here with me. Eureka, how are you doing today?
I'm pumped. We finally have a game, actual soccer, right? It's against an amateur team, but still we're putting our new players on the pitch. We're seeing what Neil has in store for us. It's like Christmas all over again.
Yeah, it's been an exciting week to go through all the Twitter stuff. Unfortunately, it is difficult to get out there for these games that are just preseason, and especially with other stuff lined up at the same time. But we do have some coverage, at least coming from the Twitter people. So yeah, we have some stuff to talk about here, and as you said, that's all very exciting.
Yeah, I mean it's a 3-1 victory. So hey, fly the W. We get one over Florida International. Now, of course, you might look at it and say, they're playing a college team, but this is part of what FIU does. They're playing Miami FC. They're playing a couple different, like Orlando City B. They're putting together a pretty cool little friendly for their college program, but. They're a team that was the Conference USA regular season champions last year, so it's a good tune-up game. I thought it was a good way and to get started, and a good way to incorporate some of the local, Florida colleges.
Yeah, and it's something that they do, like you said, every year they try and find these teams that they can play against. Often it will be college teams, but there are teams that are sending. There are teams in this area that are sending pros to different leagues, including the USL Championship. I know Ovante Mullings was, I believe, playing at FGCU, and he will likely be signing for the New York Red Bulls 2 team, which is somebody that we will be playing next year. So it's not like these teams are, just a bunch of pushovers, even for the USL Championship level.
Yeah, and if we get into the actual score line of the match, it was good to see who scored. Lucky Mkasana gets the opening goal with a Connor Antley pass in the 6th minute. So it's good to see Lucky putting one in the net. That's pretty fairly occurring thing here. But then FIU ties it up in the 16th, which is a little threatening. I mean, I would hope that we would demolish these guys. And up until that point, it was an even game, but from all accounts, between the Fence Gang, the Twitter profile, Rowdy's Game Day, and all that stuff, the pros put the clamps on the amateurs. And in the 21st minute, new Rowdy Jake LaCava on a breakaway counter puts the green and gold up 2-1, and they really just didn't look back from that moment. But what I really wanted to get your opinion on is we did get to see the 11s for the first time. And so we get Ryko, who I don't know if you think he's going to be in a competition with CJ Cochran, or if it's Ryko's job to lose just outright. It's going to be him unless he falters. But he was the first goalkeeper in net. And then in our back line, we had a 3-4-3. So you had Jordan Scarlett, Tommy Mell, and a trialist, Brandon I don't know how to say his name correctly. I'm trying to find it. Brandon, is it Turwedgie? Do you have I got to go to the media guide. I got to hit up the front office here. But in the midfield, you had Connor Antley, Lewis Hilton, Jake Arman, and Sebastian Dalgard, which looks like a pretty formidable midfield. And then up front, Jake LaCava, Steven Dos Santos, and Lucky Mkasana. What out of that 11 looks the most interesting to you?
So, yeah, there are a couple of things. Ryko Rosarena getting the start, so to speak. They did split between the first and the second half, but I think it's interesting that Ryko gets the first one. That's probably not an indication that he is the definite starter at this point, just because it's so early on. I'm sure that there is a competition because, whether or not Ryko Rosarena is very highly rated, and I believe he is, whether or not Ryko Rosarena was essentially told, it's yours to lose, which it probably was, you're always going to want to put the best player out there. So if CJ Cochran ends up being the better player, then it's likely that he will be the starter. So I don't want to, make any assumptions based on that. But another thing that interested me is I should say two things out of that interested me. Brandon, I think it's Turwig from a college team last year. If I'm not mistaken, it was Southern Methodist University. I do watch a fair bit of college soccer, but he is a former FC Dallas Academy player, and he was not signed as a homegrown once he graduated from college. So, he's obviously looking to break into the pro ranks despite that. And if you look across our back line, there's another very good FC Dallas Academy player in Aaron Gehen. So there's a track record here that I think the Rowdy staff had in mind. FC Dallas has sent a lot of good players to a lot of good places, including Ricardo Pepi from the U.S. men's national team, just going for nearly $20 million in their most recent sale. So like I said, there's a pedigree there. And if this guy ends up being a player that the Rowdies think can add to the depth at the back line, I will be more than satisfied with that, because right now we only have 3 designated center backs. I know that there are players who can play there. Connor Antley, according to Neil Collins, that is, was originally signed to be a center back. And, obviously the 3 that we had last year just never really gave up their spots because they all did so well. But, Connor Antley can do the job too. I would just like there to be a little bit more depth. And if Brendan Turwig can be that guy, I think that is brilliant. We're going to have, enough players to fill in, even if there are long-term injuries. And that's kind of what you have to keep in mind for a full season, not, one that was cut due to COVID 2 years in a row. The other thing that really interests me is Jake Arman starting in the middle. So what I had personally pictured based on, us playing him last year against the team from Charlotte that has gone down. They did not get to keep Jake Arman, as good a player as he is. I was expecting that he would be more of a left back so that Leo Fernandez could step forward into the attack more frequently. Now, again, this is just the first game of the preseason. It doesn't even necessarily mean that Neil Collins has anything set in stone. Like I was saying with Rico Rosarena and CJ Cochran, Jake Arman might still end up being a left wing back with Leo Fernandez stepping into the attack more frequently. Jake Arman might be more frequently used as a center midfielder. Jake Arman might end up being a depth piece at this point. I assume he's going to be a starter based on what we saw. But again, I don't know what's going on, at the levels that the coaching staff do. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from there. But those were the biggest pieces for me. Definitely Rico, Brandon Turwig, the trialist, and Jake Arman in the midfield.
Yeah, and I think you're on. I mean, it's the preseason, so Neil, I think, is going to, as much. There is depth to the squad, but I think more so he has a number of players that can play multiple positions, and this is the time where you do want to see, what does this guy look in this position, or what if we do something different? What are all the pieces that he has at his disposal? And we saw a little bit of that in the second half. That first half, getting 2 goals, Lucky and Jake LaCava, which I think is great to see the newcomer get on the board early. But in the second half, we saw Cochran as your goal keeper. You saw Turwig move to right back. Connor Antley move from the midfield to center back. They brought in an academy player, Tate Johnson. And then in the midfield, you had Dayon Harris, Jan Ekra, another TBU soccer guy, Faris Sahid, and then Leo Fernandez out on the wing. Then up front, you had Juan Tejada, Kyle Gregg, and Sebastian Guenzati. So now I think this goes to that last point you were making where it's like, nothing's really set in stone. I think they're going to throw a bunch of things out, but putting El Capitan out there with some of the, I guess, bench players, or at least the younger players, and maybe some guys playing different positions, those all look interesting to me. What were your thoughts about the second half 11?
Yeah, I again, this is something that I had mentioned earlier with Connor Antley moving to the back line. With Forrest Lasso, who was the USL Championship Defender of the Year two years in a row, leaving the team, obviously there is a huge hole to fill there. Not just for the fact that he's a man who's 6'5" tall, or 6'5" tall. But he needs to be replaced, and by someone who is more than just competent, because Forrest Lasso was a monster at the back. So Connor Antley stepping into that place. We saw him do it a couple times last year, mostly when we needed to bring Forrest Lasso out for some reason, like he was on a yellow card or what have you. But he can do it. Connor Antley was, as I said, as far as I am aware, brought in to play a center back role, and then Jordan Scarlett, Aaron Gehen, and Forrest Lasso just held their own for the whole year. So if Connor Antley can just step into that role, then that's pretty good. I think that Connor Antley has proven how good of a player he can be. But the other thing is, do you want to lose out on what Connor Antley brought to the right wing back spot? And maybe there is something to be said that he was one of the better players at that role. Is Dayon Harris, who stepped into the right wing back spot in the second half, going to be good enough to, displace Connor Antley? And then we can put him at center back and not worry about what we're missing out on. These are all facets that we have to think about. Just as you said, it's about tinkering. It's tinkering here, and we're trying to figure out who looks best at what position with what people around them. And if you find that magic formula, I think that we did, towards the end of last year when we had all of the players that were our regular starters, and then Jan Ekra moved from the midfield into the attack, depending on when we had the ball or didn't. And Lawrence Wyke and Lewis Hilton were the two behind him. That was the magic formula, it seemed. And when Steven Dos Santos came back from injury, boy, that team was absolutely firing on all cylinders. So, yeah, you have to replace at least one player in that 11. Maybe you replace a couple over, what the circumstances look like. But it is going to be just finding out who fits where at what time in the best circumstances to give you that perfect team again. And that is what I'm looking forward to see Neil Collins try to do.
And in the second half here, Kyle Gregg is the guy who scores a goal in the 75th minute, receiving a cross from I guess friend of the show, or like we're longtime fans of Jan Ekra here. Ekra gets the cross. Gregg pounds it in at 75th minute. So it was good to see. While there were some people, I guess from the Fence gang reporting that there was maybe a couple knocks here and there, there were two notable names that we did not talk about that I haven't heard if they were injured or why they did not play. But one would be Aaron Gehen, and the other would be Jordan Adebayo-Smith. Those would be two names that I did not see in either of the 11s, and from all reports, I didn't see them get in the game as substitutes or something like that. So something to keep your eye on. Who knows at this point, until maybe a couple more weeks. That's when we really, I think, start digging in on, like, are there people that are injured? Why aren't some person playing? Why is one person playing more than another? At this point, I'm just happy that they got on the pitch and played 90 minutes. So the other thing that I'm really, really, really excited for is we had a wonderful interview with author Ian Plenderleith last week. James, you did a wonderful job getting into a very interesting conversation as we continue that history series, and we did it again this week. This week we had the pleasure of having someone that is a member of the inaugural Soccer Bowl winning championship team, a little bit of history, here and there with the Major League Soccer, and a lot about the kind of building of the game in this area. So what lead us into this? Like, this was exciting to have a friend of yours, and I won't spoil who it was. I'll let you do all that. But I love that we're continuing this history series this week.
Yeah, I agree that, I thought last week's interview was good, and I wasn't sure how we were possibly going to top that, but I was able to reach out to, someone who is a family friend, and I think that we possibly did top it because, I, as you said, he was a member of the inaugural Rowdies team. He won the Soccer Bowl that same year. That's like incredible. And after that, not only was he a player, he moved into the front office for the old Rowdies organization. So he's got the insight, not only in terms of what it was like to literally be out on the field and kicking other players every so often, but he also knows what it's like to have to run a team, and especially to have to run a team in the old NASL. And then after they collapsed, when there isn't a regular league to play in. These are all incredible things to try to learn from, especially when, the fans right now seem to have such a stable league and team in front of them. There are so many facets of dealing with an organization that is in flux like that. And I think that it is very cool. And then obviously, as you said, he was not just a front office person for the old Rowdies. He was also for the Tampa Bay Mutiny when they were in MLS. And, you know, that was another team that was very much in flux. So he brings just so much nuance to this discussion of what it's like to be behind the scenes. And yeah, without any further ado, please, everyone, welcome my friend Eddie Austin. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So yeah, like I said, this is going to be in the history series because you played with the old Rowdies, and we're going to get into that here. So if you could, to start off our interview, like I do with everyone, I just want to get you know, your personal background in soccer and how you ultimately got to be the player who was capable of playing for the Rowdies.
Well, let me go back to my family emigrated from Scotland. I was born in Glasgow, Scotland, and we emigrated to northern New Jersey, which was an amazing community for soccer. It was a very ethnic community in terms of the early parts of the game, with local players that came from Eastern Europe, South America, and the British Isles, and Ireland and Poland and other European countries. So and Italy. So it was a great ethnic community to be embraced to the game when we came over. Coming from that, I did play high school soccer in New Jersey, and played on 2 state championship teams there, and also the New Jersey state team, which was players from all over the state of New Jersey that represented the state, under 18 years old. And primarily my youth soccer was for the Kearney Scots, which was, I grew up in Harrison, New Jersey, which is the home of the Red Bull Stadium now. And
yes,
the Kearney
true.
Scots were in Kearney, which was a neighboring community. You could walk a few blocks and you're into Kearney. And so there's a strong, Irish, Scottish population there with fish and chip shops and Scotch butchers and this, that, and the next thing. So the Kearney Scots is a very competitive youth soccer team. And a lot of the soccer there, the facilities, they aren't like they are in today's game. We played a lot in the Harrison courts, which was tennis courts, and we basically took down the netting for the tennis, and we made that our soccer pitch. So it was hard-nosed street soccer. The goals were the chain link fence, with painted goal, and you were hitting concrete instead of AstroTurf or grass, and you played for hours and hours, and the team that kept winning stayed on. And people would sit there waiting to get on games for hours and hours and, missing their dinner and all the rest of it. But it was street soccer, and they did the same in Kearney. So it was quite an introduction to the game. And then from there, I went on to play Division I soccer at Hartwick College. And that was in upstate New York. It was a top 20 Division I team every year, where I garnered All-American honors there, an honor there. Mm-hmm.
Well, so, one thing that I recognize from what you're talking about is something that is pretty common to a lot of Brazilian players' backgrounds is, playing that street soccer, as you said, and kind of having to learn in these small-sided games. So that's obviously, a good primer for getting into your career. So you played with the Rowdies when the team was actually formed initially, if I'm not mistaken. You were there for that first year. Well, how did that come about?
Came in the first year. Prior to, I was drafted. Was out of college. I sustained a stomach muscle injury, and so I didn't play with the Cosmos, and then I was acquired by the Rowdies after I got past that injury. And so I came down here for the outdoor season in 1975 to play in that first year, after the year of recovering from my injury. And the Rowdies had really been in the market in 74 with an indoor season. So they had started to build the brand and the reputation through indoor soccer. And then in 1975, it was just like the whole team came together, and we went on to win, the championship. And that was an amazing year in so many ways.
Yeah, I can only imagine being involved. This is the first year for the team in terms of them being outdoors, and then you go on to win the championship. So, what was that like specifically going through the campaign and then, getting into the playoffs and actually making it to the final and winning that?
Pretty amazing. It was a very exciting year in terms of, well, when I first got here, my impression was that this was a soccer frontier. There wasn't a lot of soccer here. So the Rowdies were very unique in so many ways that, the introduction of the great marketing, the look of the uniforms, the accents of the players, and there was no other pro sports here at the time. So, we were the first, and it really actually branded the name on a global basis for the Tampa Bay area. So the fans really embraced that. They loved the open, flamboyant play of the team. They scored a lot of goals. And I'm just going to step back to the indoors. I mean, the indoors being the first introduction earlier on at the Bayfront Center. Indoor soccer, those games are very well attended. You've seen a lot of goals. The fans saw a lot of goals, and then it really segued into a very successful outdoor season. And it all came together in a unique way, in that the players loved being here. The fans loved the players. They embraced each other, and we adopted each other, and we felt very proud to represent Tampa against other teams around the country.
Yeah, that's really, really cool that, it was such a success from the beginning. It's not always the case, even when we look at new teams in America today, that they are embraced immediately and, they fill in the stadium and they're getting all of this coverage. But as you said, being the only professional sports team in the area probably did help. But after the Soccer Bowl, specifically there, can you tell us a little bit more about the game? Because I'm sure that's what garnered even more people's interest. They
winning the championship.
Suddenly they're winning already.
Winning the championship was huge. We played Portland Timbers in San Jose, and I believe a crowd around 17,000 were there. It was on national television. And Portland was a great team, and we were up against a great team, but we had a great team too. And the first goal was scored by Arsène Auguste from Haiti. He scored a rocket shot from well outside the box, and we were up 1-0. And then West Ham and player Clyde Best, who was from Bermuda but had played at West Ham in England, he scored the second goal, which was a beautiful ball he took through, and he just slipped it into the corner of the net, and we won 2-0. And it was absolutely amazing, the response we got. We were Tampa's team. Going out before the game, people were excited. I remember Dick Crippen, who was the wonderful PA announcer, saying, "What do you think of your Rowdies now?" When we would keep having great achievements, and they played the song "Do You Know the Way to San Jose?" Dionne Warwick, all the way up to playing that game. So it was a culmination of a great season, and to bring the trophy home was like a huge accomplishment for this area. And the name of the Rowdies was infused throughout the country and throughout other parts of the world.
I absolutely love that. I think that it's super cool. Like I said, just the immediate success, like how many people would be attracted to that, but it also seems these cool little details about the Rowdies team that was from back then and how they brought it all together. But after the season, you played a little more for the Rowdies, but not only that, you ultimately stepped into a front office role with the Rowdies as well. And if you could tell us more about that side of your career with the old organization, that would be very cool for our purposes, because we were talking about, how the Rowdies went season to season, but also how they were doing within NASL as the league organization. So if you could expand upon that for everybody who was listening for our history series, I think that would really broaden our understanding.
Well, absolutely. As the league, continued into 76, 77, 78, it became more sophisticated in the players that would come into the league. And it was covered earlier in the one podcast I heard quite well about some of the stars that came into the league. But all of a sudden, you started to see, former world-class players, World Cup players coming into the game, and the crowd swelled. The Rowdies game that was in national television, where the Rowdies won in front of a national television audience, beating the Cosmos, was huge. But players like Gerd Müller, who scored the winning goal for Germany against the Netherlands in the '74 World Cup, came into the league. Jeff Hurst, who scored the hat trick, I think the only player to ever score a hat trick in a World Cup final when England won the World Cup in 1966, came into the league. England goalkeeper Gordon Banks came into the league. Trevor Francis, amazing player, came into the league. Giorgio Canaglia was here. Eusebio, the great Portuguese national team player, were here. So now all of a sudden, you're looking at this type of level of play. It was amazing, and the television coverage had increased, and the marketing out of the front office at the Rowdies was really, really cutting edge and impressive.
So tell me more about this. The marketing campaigns that they were leading. That was something that you highlighted as something we could really delve into with this interview, because apparently the Rowdies did that in a very interesting way.
Yeah, they did. The overriding goal of the marketing was to make the Rowdies part of the community, and it was all geared to fun and education. And if I do take a step back in the early years of 1975. That front office, the creativity, and they brought McDonald and Little, the marketing agency, and it all initiated the Ralph Rowdy logo. The artistry was done by Scott Ross. The song that came out, the work that was done in the community to start youth soccer, and Farouk Qureshi, from that first year, deserves a ton of credit, because he was doing the youth development. He did hundreds of clinics. He was everywhere in the community. Francisco Marcos, who was a very creative public relations director, was very invested in educating the community and the press about the game and the rules of the game. And, the first youth soccer association was started, with Farouk and Francisco, called TBASO, Tampa Bay Area Youth Soccer. And that was out of Town and Country. And all the players' apartments were in Town and Country. So that's where it started. Then the Brandon League started from '75. So, and then it went to, Temple Terrace and Carrollwood and other area locations. So by the time I come back into the front office, soccer is a much more established program in terms of youth soccer development. Again, as I said, that the team, they had Rodney Marsh and other stars from England that came in to embellish the quality of the play. So it was an exciting time. The Cosmos up in this giant stadium at the time were pulling in 40, 50,000 people. It was one game 70,000. So the game was really taking off.
Now, another unfortunate aspect, I would say, is obviously moving forward, the NASL was unable to sustain itself and the league collapsed. Could you tell us, from the time that you spent in the Rowdies front office, how things were going from your perspective? The Rowdies itself outlasted the league, of course. So maybe things were just done a little bit differently, such that the Rowdies were more sustainable in the long term. How did you see both the league shuttering and then the Rowdies organization persisting?
Yeah, it was sad that the league shuttered, and I believe it was due to a lot of overexpansion at the time, and teams not being financially viable to compete with the competitive teams. And what made the Rowdies very successful was that they were not only entertaining and had great marketing and events at the games, but it was a very competitive team that would win games. And so in other markets, if they couldn't keep up competitive-wise, it put a stress on those franchises. And I think, a lot of them decided to pull the plug because they couldn't keep up financially with the rest of it. So the eventual ending of the league, it was a sad time. The original owner, George Strawbridge, who was a great owner, and passed the baton on to eventually the ownership went to Dick Corbett, Stella Thayer, and Bob Blanchard. And then from there, Cornelia Corbett ran the team. That was a difficult time because, you're trying to sustain the presence of the Rowdies in this market. And so there was different ways, to be done. But I do give credit, Rodney Marsh was the manager at the time, general manager, and I do give credit to Cornelia Corbett and Rodney for keeping the name alive in this community. It kept relevancy. We kept doing youth clinics. The Camp Kicking the Grass programs continued. We did appearances in the community with the business community. So the fact that was sustained was a bright spot in what was a dark period for the NASL, obviously, in soccer in Tampa.
Gotcha. And it's very interesting as well to hear, how the Rowdies itself, what they were doing in the years that there wasn't necessarily a national or a North American soccer league, I should say, to play in. So the Rowdies, as far as I'm aware, did organize a couple of games in the intervening years when they weren't playing indoor. Can you talk about those games and some of the competitions the Rowdies did involve themselves in?
Yeah, we played the U.S. national team, and there were some other international games and a series of games that kept the Rowdies playing in the stadium at that time, which was Tampa Stadium. And when we first got to Tampa Stadium, the end zones weren't in yet, so they got filled in by the time the Buccaneers came. But yeah, we were still playing games in the stadium and doing a lot of community activities that sustained the name of the Rowdies and kept players here playing so that soccer remained alive in Tampa Bay.
Gotcha. That's I think that's another interesting detail because everybody obviously now thinks about the Bucks when they think about Raymond James in this case, but it's a different time, and there's a lot more to think about than just the local soccer team. I would say to take it back to what we were talking about after the Rowdies themselves ultimately collapsed as an organization because there wasn't as much to build the team upon. You continued to stay involved in sports, not only in the Tampa Bay area, but beyond. Is that correct? I believe that you said that you had helped out as well with the Olympics.
Yes. Well, I continued to be involved in soccer. I had moved on to the American Automobile Association to work in administration there, but I also was involved in soccer. I was the Day of Game producer for World Cup '94 in Orlando, and also the Olympics, the U.S. Soccer Olympics at the Orlando venue in 1996. Venue manager for the Gold Cup that came to Raymond James Stadium. Kept involved in coaching. I had an A license. I had gone to coaching school, so I was involved with the Florida State Soccer Coaches Association, where I was on the instructional staff, where we would go to different youth leagues and provide licensing instruction for the entry level coaching licenses that helped youth soccer become more sophisticated in their training methods. Because back in the day in '75. In '76 and '77 and so forth, a lot of those coaches that were coaching in youth soccer were volunteers or dad and mom coaches. And as time evolved with the coaching licensing schools and U.S. Soccer Federation's licensing programs, then players start to develop where they're becoming young moms and dads. Now they're the new coaches with experience in the game. So that has had a huge impact on the development of youth soccer. But so I kept involved with the World Cup, the Olympics, the Gold Cup, and we had several U.S. games here that I would help the U.S. Soccer Federation with, or for organization committees that we had to host these games to keep the game alive.
Gotcha. And
And well,
it's funny. I think I attended a couple of the U.S. national team games and some of the Gold Cup games when they were here when I was a kid. But it's very interesting to hear that you were involved in that. Another aspect of the old NASL that we touched on when we did the history of that league was that it seemed to, lead to a boost in youth soccer players. So this is something that you've touched on already and just brought up again here that, the Rowdies being involved seem to have a lot more impact on children either wanting to play or ultimately just getting involved in soccer in this area.
Big time. We, in fact, I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, one of the great achievements, among many of the great achievements that the Rowdies had for the market, was that we were able to establish high school soccer in this community, Hillsborough and Pinellas County. And that was a campaign that took a few years, whereby we were working with the Pinellas and Hillsborough County school system to assist them in looking at soccer as a sport for boys and girls, men and women, soccer. And so it took some private funding from the local businesses and individuals to fund the first year of soccer for Pinellas and Hillsborough County schools. And so it took off from there. I believe Leto High School won a state championship soon after soccer was established here. And also, I believe the next year, Seminole High School over in Pinellas County won a state championship. So the establishment of, the youth soccer and the high school game, it also impacted the Suncoast Soccer League for adults. It just had a tremendous effect across the spectrum for soccer that was the foundation of what we see today.
Yeah, that's so incredibly interesting to think about as well, because, coming up as a youth player when I did, obviously high school soccer had already been established by that point and was already going for many years. It's just incredible to even think of a time that, high school soccer did not exist in Hillsborough and Pinellas counties, but to have established that, I guess I owe you even for that debt of gratitude, because, it was something that I was able to take part in as a youth player myself.
Yeah, and we look back at that with pride, and we see how many young players have come through those programs. And, early in my first year in '75, after the season, Alec Pringle, the first Rowdy signed, I believe, and myself, we helped coach and guide the University of Tampa from a club team to an actual team. And then when I went north to play up in New Jersey the following year, Alec Pringle continued coaching for another year at the University of Tampa. So it impacted so many levels of soccer. And you look at the success of these programs today and you say, that is just awesome. The great success track that both youth soccer, adult soccer, and the college game has done in this area. And the USF has always had a very good program too in soccer, as other local colleges in the area. But it all kind of, the cornerstone of a lot of it was from the initial Rowdies youth development programs.
Yeah, for sure. There have been, a lot of very good players developed in the last 10, 20 years. And I think that the Tampa Bay area in general is, a very big hotbed in terms of Florida, along with generally, I guess, Orlando and the Miami areas. But yeah, we are all, in debt to the Rowdies organization because of the path that was laid down that wasn't even there before.
Oh, no question. And I look back on that, the former players and administrators, I believe we all look at it with a strong sense of pride.
Well, I'm only happy to hear that, because, I feel like everyone who's benefited feels the same way. To get a little closer to the present day, you also were involved in the Tampa Bay Mutiny MLS team for a couple of years. Can you tell us about that period and your time in the front office there? Yeah,
well, that was an exciting period, MLS, which stemmed out of the World Cup. And, the Tampa Bay Mutiny started in '96. And they had a lot of, great players come in, and Carlos Valderrama, players like Roy Lassiter, players over the years that came into like Scott Garlick, Steve Stritchell. A lot of them, there was a focus on American players, yet with international world stars also to complement the team. So it was a very exciting time. It was great for the community, and we played in the original Tampa Stadium. Then when Raymond James Stadium was built, the team moved into Raymond James Stadium.
Gotcha. And if I'm not mistaken, during that period, you also won an award as one of the MLS Executives of the Year. Am I correct with that?
Yeah. I was the Operations Executive of the Year twice in my career at the Tampa Bay Mutiny. And so, it was a really great honor, but the whole organization was a really great organization. And the team, as time progressed, wasn't quite as competitive, and I think it was a bit of a for the first year, we're a strong team, highly competitive, great record, supporter shield, rookie of the year, all sorts of, and Carlos Valderrama, all the all-stars and the MVP and so forth. And it was and Coach of the Year, Thomas Rongen. It was a great initial start. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to continue.
Now,
with the evolution.
not to get too hard hitting or anything here, but what would you say? Unfortunately, the Tampa Bay Mutiny are no longer around. What would you say ultimately led to the organization not being able to last in MLS?
I think I will say that it was because of the league in 2001 was going through some financial challenges, and we were a league-owned team. And from day one, we were not able to achieve getting local ownership. So the team was contracted. The league contracted two teams. That was the Tampa Bay Mutiny and the team in Fort Lauderdale. There was two other league-owned teams, but they went from 12 down to 10. So it was due to financial hardship, and we could not get a local owner to take over the franchise.
Gotcha. Okay. So obviously that does impact, the financial stability of the league overall to have to put this up. And I understand that. But the good thing is, now obviously we do have what seems to be a thriving soccer team in the Tampa Bay area and representing us. So my question for you at this point is, are you able to follow the current iteration team or the current iteration of the Rowdies that much? And if so, what have you seen recently, especially for a team that seems to be on the up?
Well, I follow them in the media, and I was at the final, and I thought at the final game, number one, it's a well-run organization, and they've garnered a lot of honors in the last few years. And they had the Coach of the Year this year. They've won some conference titles, Defenders of the Year. So they've got an entertaining team. The night of the final, I was just thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, it was a great game in terms of the atmosphere, the fans. It was packed in St. Pete. The stadium looked great. The whole game was a joy to be in there. But one thing I took away, I know they didn't win the game, but the one thing I took away from that game was the passion the fans have for the team. I mean, it was a passionate crowd. And so I'm excited for the future. They're in a good league with the USL Championship. It's a button-down organization. I see that they've signed quite a few players from last year's team and goal scorers. So that's all very, very positive and exciting for the future.
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of, positivity around the team, as you said, but there's also a lot of positivity for the future at this point. There seemed to be, a clear direction with the people who are doing
Yep.
the front office operations
Yep.
this time. And, it seems to be just about in the same vein as the prior team. The one last question that I have for you here, because we've gone through most of the stuff that I wanted to discuss were in relation to the Rowdies, but you are a former player, of course. You have been in touch with the guys who made the team what it was at the time, and the guys whose names a lot of people still know. Are there any anecdotes you'd care to share with us, or are there any instances where the old Rowdies players all get together and hang out? How is it how is it kind of being a former Rowdy with all of these former players to hang out with?
We stay fairly close. I'm going to say there's a good amount, maybe more than a dozen players that have made their home here and settled here, raised their families, gone into business here. So we do keep in touch. I'm going to say before the holidays, we got together, quite a few of the players, to honor Lizzie Berta, the longtime great Fanny, head of the Fannies and, fan of the team. And we all had lunch together, and Rodney Marsh was there, Steve Wegerle was there, Wes McLeod was there, I was there, Farouk was there, Perry Vanderbeck, Manny Andrzejewski, who was visiting from England, was there, Winston DeBose was there. I'm sorry if I left anybody out, but we had a good crowd, and it was, a lot of love at the table, just, reminiscing and, honoring this great woman for, her support of the Rowdies over the years. And then just last week, we got together for one of the players' birthdays. So from time to time, we do get together. We go to games together quite a bit and see some games, but it'd probably be good to maybe have a big reunion at one point. But we do keep in touch, that's for sure.
Well, I think, that's something that the fans will be able to take away from this as a very cool aspect. I know that you just went through a list of some real local legends, I would say. But Eddie, I think that, we've gotten through everything that we have lined up for today. So you've been very generous with your time. Thank you so much for stopping by and, having this chat with me. I think that it has been very enlightening. I've loved doing this whole history series, for my own benefit, but everything, of course, is for the listeners. So I'm hoping that they take away from this just as much as I have, both in terms of learning what everything is about and, the cool side that, all of the old Rowdies players still hang out together. I personally love that.
Well, we do stay active. And like I say, the people that were at that lunch, like Perry and Farouk and Winston and Steve and Rodney Marsh, I mean, we like to stay in touch, and it's a great thing for the history of the game. So, I appreciate you having me on and sharing my perspective. There's a lot of different perspectives, but it was a wonderful history, and they kind of referred to our early years as Camelot when we first came to Tampa Bay to start the Rowdies organization up.
I love that. Okay, well, we'll have to keep that in mind, and maybe we'll rename this series if we ever go to replay, some bits here and there in the future. But Eddie, thank you again, and we will get back with one more historical interview in this series, and then we will get back to the present day.
All right, thanks for having me.
Wonderful interview. Again, like as we introduced it, like I think I didn't know how you were going to top Ian Plenderleith, but I mean, I won't say it. We'll say it's up there. It's in the same pantheon, right? It was another good conversation with a former player, former executive, and it's just a privilege and an honor to listen to you guys talk. Let's move forward. Another thing, a little bit of news is we have just launched our. It's the Year of the Tiger, so we've launched our little tiger mascot. We're calling him Trophy the Tiger, and we have some cool designs at shop.rblrsports.com where you can have a trophy wearing the blue and white of the Bolts or the green and gold of the Rowdies. There's a cool one wearing a pirate hat. There's a cool. I mean, it's so cool. it's cute and it's fierce and it's awesome and I love it. So it's another cool design that we have. If you go to shop.rblrsports.com, if you use the promo code COYR, you're going to get 10% off that order. So we're trying to come up with cool designs all the time. We're sitting here. I'm firing up Photoshop whenever I can. So again, it helps us out a lot. Liking and subscribing, of course, this podcast is free, and we love that you do that. But if you happen to have a couple bucks in your pocket and you want to wear a cool shirt that supports our pod, head over to shop.rblrsports.com. There's a link right in the description. Couple guys that might have a couple more dollars in their pocket are maybe one of the 175 players that registered for the opportunity to try out for the green and gold. James, I love to get your thoughts on this. We obviously we weren't able to go there and cover it and see if there was anyone that really stood out. But I think that it's a good thing to build the futures and the academy of the Rowdies with maybe a lottery ticket for a player to join the professional team and camp. It would be very unlikely, I think, to pluck someone from obscurity. But then again, people fall through the cracks, and that's if you can find someone that shows up and you can maybe mold them into something, they might get to be on the bench or something for this team. So, what are your thoughts on the USL having open tryouts or the Rowdies having open tryouts? And was there anything you heard from the fallout of that today?
I have to say, unfortunately, I have not heard anything from the fallout yet. I will be listening for sure, but I will mention for the trialists here, what this is for the most part is going to be a lot of college players who do not have immediate plans to join another team elsewhere. So if anyone is unaware, the Major League Soccer draft took place in January, and that's essentially where the best of the best college players go to whichever team obviously drafts them. But then you have to look at those players and go through it. Mostly the drafts do not lead to a lot of MLS level or above talent at this point in the game. There are a lot of people who are trying to sign players straight out of their youth academies. So the players who end up going to college are the ones that are not as heralded, even though a lot of them actually do turn out to be pretty good players. So which ones don't get signed from the draft, they might still be looking for a team. If you keep going, then there are players who probably weren't even drafted, but actually, they're good enough to compete for at least a spot on a team that is maybe not MLS level, but as we are looking at the USL Championship level right below. So I'm assuming the players who are going to possibly get out of this are ones who are former, very recent college players. It's open trial, so anyone can go. And I know that there are people who, haven't really played too much soccer in their lives, and they're just like, well, I'm going to go put my name on that list and see what happens anyway. And by the way, best of luck to them. I hope that, it's a good time regardless. But the Rowdies have plucked a couple of players from these trials before. I believe Juan Tejada was one of those guys. And I know for sure that the Rowdies pulled a player, Darwin Espinal, several years ago from these open tryouts. He is no longer on the Rowdies team, but I believe he is still playing in NISA, the National Independent Soccer Association. And I will have to check my sources on that one. But yeah, there are definitely diamonds in the rough. There are not, a ton of players that you're going to get from this. And as has been said, numerous times on Twitter, in the Discord between all the fans, it's going to be the case that they're lucky if they get one out of this. But, that one might be the perfect depth piece that we need, as I had just talked about in the segment before we got to our interview today.
I would say the next piece of news is, unfortunately, a player leaving the USL Championship and leaving the Rowdies, and that is Zach Steinberger has announced that he is retired. I'll let you get more into it, but I mean, just a guy who, from the current state that the Rowdies are in, which is a very top form, just in every facet, Zach is one of the reasons we've built this foundation. So I want to say good luck to him. And James, what are your thoughts on Zach Steinberger, a guy that I guess we were up and down on as he kind of fell out of the 11 last year, but just in terms of his overall career here at the Rowdies, it's been nothing less than a absolute success.
Absolutely. I know, as we said, Zach Steinberger last season did not have the season probably that he, wanted to have, because he was a player who was a starter from the beginning. And we were going through the statistics each game about who did what with their touches on the field, all that kind of stuff. Zach was unfortunately often in the lower amount of touches, and he just wasn't really driving too many, big scoring chances that I think he was actually known for from the previous year. So unfortunately his playing time dipped, and from there I think it was mostly Jan Ekra who stepped into that position and then kind of made it his own, playing it the way that he then went on to do against first the Charlotte Independents. But the role was previously a number 10 sitting in front of two central midfielders, and if you look back a season before last year, 2020, and that's when Zach Steinberger absolutely shone in that role. He was the number 10 for our team, and he led the way in so many different positions, in so many different categories. Not only did he, actually help us with a lot of individual stuff that you have to do as a workhorse midfielder, but he actually scored a couple of important goals. One of the most important goals, in fact, was when he scored against Louisville in the Eastern Conference Championship that then put us into the USL Championship final, which of course we did not get to play that year because of COVID. I think that, that goal was what really set all the fans off. Like, oh, Louisville was the favorite, far and above. I think that everybody really wasn't ready to believe that we were capable of winning that. And then when Zach put that in, it was very early on in the game, but we held on. And that will be his standout career moment for me as a fan of the Tampa Bay Rowdies. I'm sure that, if we asked him what are the standout moments of your career, that would be one among many. But yeah, I think that his legacy will still be one of a top class talent who did incredible very important things for this club. And, not only that, soccer is only one aspect of life. According to everything that we have seen from him, as people who can follow him on Twitter and as people who can interact with him after the games, he's an incredibly gracious guy. He seems super nice, and he seems like he's always trying to look for something better to do, and or something good to do with what he's been given in life. So I think that he's not just a good soccer player, but he seems to be a great guy, and I absolutely do wish him all the best in the future in his post career, whatever that turns out to be. He deserves it.
Absolutely. Moving ahead, the next Saturday the Rowdies get a really good chance. They go from playing an amateur team to playing a Major League Soccer team. They wear purple. We don't like them that much. They're in Orlando City. It will be a closed-door match. We have tried to get into the game as media, but they unfortunately would not let us. But we did try. But kickoff should be 1 o'clock. I don't know if there is a chain link fence that we can look through to see that over there in the Orlando City stadium, but it would be nice to see. Now, I'm thinking they wanted to close this door, James, because they don't want it to be common knowledge that the Tampa Bay Rowdies are about to go up to Orlando and put a butt whooping on them. So I'm confident. I'll put my Mitch hat on and say 4-1 to the lads, but anything could happen here as the green and gold face the purple of the Orlando City. I can't even say that name without like a little bit of a twinge. But James, what are you hoping to hear after another preseason friendly?
What I'm hoping to hear is that no injuries. That's a big one. But what I'm definitely hoping to hear is that, when we get out of this game, Neil Collins has made a decision on one of these couple players who are not actually with the team, but are trying to get hooked onto the team. So that Brandon Terweg, I hope that, if he is going to be one of our depth pieces at center back, he has proven himself to be capable of it. Or if he's not, then I hope that they have somebody lined up who probably could. again, there are lots of college players out there who are trying to go pro. There are going to be a lot of guys who have quality, and if it's the right qualities that Neil Collins is looking for in a center back, maybe he can mold them into somebody good. I know that the New York Red Bulls drafted somebody from Navy who is 6'7", 6'8", and he has not signed on with their first team as far as I'm aware. So if he signs with the New York Red Bulls too, I guess we'll have to play against him. But there is definitely some talent out there, is what I'm trying to say. I'm hoping that, you know, that is what these preseason games are for. A, get your fitness back. Don't get injured. Make sure that you're ready for the season when it actually starts and the points are on the line. And B, let's try and fill in these holes on the roster that we know exist.
Well, I would say, two. What are you don't? We don't need the answers because obviously we don't know until this kind of progresses further. But after one preseason game, where are you? Are there one or two areas that you're looking as most intriguing in terms of position battles or holes that need to be filled on the Rowdies?
You know, I'm not really seeing too many holes from last year. There is obviously the two big ones. There is Forrest Lasso, who needs to be replaced. Is that going to be Timmy Mell? Is that going to be someone they haven't signed? Is that going to be Connor Antley? We'll have to find out. Or the other one then is in net. So Reiko Rosarena, CJ Cochran, who's going to win that? Possibly Reiko Rosarena. Maybe CJ Cochran is going to be the guy to do it. But they're also going to have a third goalkeeper on this roster just in case there is a series of injuries. That's what you want to have going into a season. So it's not a hole to fill as much because the starting position is the hole, but they will need to make sure they know who is starting, who's behind him, and then who's behind him.
Awesome. Well, James, that's all that I have in the notes here. I guess why don't you preview what's coming up next week and send us home?
Yeah, so we are going to do one more interview in our history podcast series, and then after that, it is going to be all based on the upcoming season because we are getting close enough that we are ready to actually, start talking about the team that is. So we have one interview coming up with former Rowdy Perry Vanderbeck. Perry Vanderbeck also played with the old team in the 1980s, and he was a front office person for the Tampa Bay Mutiny as well. And not only that, he had a little stint with the team that I mentioned back in our NASL specific history about it was Team America. So the U.S. national team did not have a base at that point, and they didn't really have, a lot of good competition. So what did they do? The NASL created Team America to compete in the league, and they actually finished bottom of their division the year that they were in the NASL. But, it still seems like it's a very important building block on getting to the team that ultimately qualified for the World Cup in 1990, then hosted the World Cup in 1994, and blah, blah, blah. Present day is hopefully about to qualify for the next World Cup in November. So yeah, Perry Vanderbeck has a very interesting history in soccer in this country, and I think that he has a lot to offer us as listeners. I know that I'm looking forward to the interview again personally. I know Perry, I've known him for several years at this point, but I haven't had a discussion like this with him, so I think that it's going to be super interesting for me just as much as anybody else.
All right. Well, I guess that wraps it up. Guys, thank you. Thank you for taking your time. If you got this far, we're asking for one more thing. Wherever you're listening to this, if it's on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and that way you get all of our content that we do about the Rays, the Rowdies, the Bucks, the Lightning. Every single week, we give you all this content. So you can get right into your device as soon as we upload it. Also, if you're on social media, we are at RBLR Sports, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. You can also reach me at Eureka, YURIKA, RBLR. And James, hit him. What's your Twitter, man? We got to up your follower count.
My Twitter is at RBLRJamesK. So yeah,
Boom.
Do follow me, and you can get at me with all of your burning questions about the Rowdies.
Well, for James, for Leo, for all of us here at RBLR Sports, we say thank you one more time. Thank you so much, and a big ol' come on you Rowdies.
Come on you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, Please remember to like and subscribe.